This is dedicated to all my beautiful queens, all my beautiful ladies out there. She's a queen. Go queen. You got it, girl. She's a queen. You better represent. Go queen. Go queen. Go. She's a queen about her business. Queen. Working hard on a mission. Yeah. Head high, purpose driven. Purpose driven. Crown on never tilted. Go queen, go queen, go queen, go. Represent, you're a queen, oh.
Thank you guys for joining another episode of the Q Chat podcast. Today, my special guest, she's a cosmetologist with over 20 years experience, hair care industry veteran, author, and entrepreneur. Her name is Ms. Danielle C. Giddens, and we're going to talk about her new book. She also, common theme for the show, she has an amazing story, and she has a new book entitled From Poverty and Prison to Purpose. So I'm really excited to talk with her. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm so excited to talk with you. So like I said, I know you have this new book, From Poverty and Prison to Purpose. So I just wanted to chop it up and talk about your childhood and your history and just how you overcame a lot of obstacles. But I wanted to start off by just discussing your childhood and where you were born and just maybe some things that you went through, because I know I feel like childhood ties into some things that happen to us in adulthood and things like that. So how was your upbringing?
My upbringing was, I feel like, as children, I feel like we always feel like, we were protected. And so there was a time in my life where I felt like I had a great childhood. I felt like I was loved. I felt like, there was laughter and love within the home. It was so many people, so for a small part of that lifetime, I felt like I was loved. I enjoyed being around my family. I think family became the highlight of my escapes. Mm-hmm. And so, growing up younger, it was good. It was the, poverty-stricken, projects, but I had love. I had my great grandmother. I had my grandmother. I had my mother. And I think that where my mother fell short, my great grandmother and my grandmother picked up. So I think in that it was awesome for me. No complaints until after, I was molested. And then after I started being exposed to, because that kind of created like, this quiet thing, it made me not, speak a lot. So yeah. That kind of, put me into a different situation of not understanding fully, what was happening. But I think that was the beginning of a lot of other things. And so when I got exposed outside and in school with other kids, and you realize that, they have two parents, they are raised differently, you start looking at it as if, you are missing something. So, I think that it was probably around my teenage years where I realized I was missing a lot. But in the grand scheme of things, I still appreciate what I did have. You learn to appreciate what you had as opposed to what you didn't have. And I think what allowed me to appreciate that was Antwone Fisher, the movie. Okay. Because, I thought about, once I saw him, it was like, well, I had, you start to put into perspective the things that you had. My mother was there. My mother did our hair to go to school. We had meals. She made sure we ate. It wasn't full abandonment when it came to that. So yeah. I think that you learn to appreciate the things that you had when you look at what other people didn't have.
Now, what city were you raised in?
I actually am from Baltimore, Maryland. I was raised in McCullough Home Projects. I spent 18 years of my life there. People will find out when they read in a book. I left when I was 18.
Okay. Okay. Well, not like I was. I don't want to give away a bunch of details of the book,
Right.
but I know, like the title, of course, is From Poverty and Prison to Purpose. So, do you mind like just summarizing, the details? Not, like I said, without giving away the entire book, but just summarizing, what led you to your incarceration and how was that experience as a woman of color, dealing with that?
To be honest, until I wrote this book, I didn't realize a lot of things and how they affected me. And I think
Mhm.
that the one thing that I could say is that I'm glad God made me a person that don't sit and fester in, my brokenness or, fester in the things that happen to me. And I don't know how, but I've learned early on to find out, look at me. I always reflect on me when
Mhm.
I'm in a situation, even if it was something that somebody else inflicted on me, I felt like you made the decision. So
Right.
early on, I realized, we are all just one decision away from, being, in a place where opposite of where we are.
Yeah.
And so, I grew up around a lot of uncles. I had a lot of uncles. It was crime, drugs, violence, all kind of mayhem. So that behavior influenced me in a way where I felt like I didn't want any parts of it at all.
Mm.
However, moving throughout life, what I thought I didn't want to be a part of, I wound up becoming a part of.
Yeah.
And that was through relationship. So,
Mm.
I was around a boyfriend that, he was a drug dealer. And so opened up these opportunities of, ways of making money that I really didn't care about until you constantly lay with somebody. Like they say, you sit in a room with darkness, and you're one little piece of light, that light or that candle will blow out. And eventually I thought the way he thought. And
Mhm.
so that actually put me in a place that I wanted to have money, to take care of my daughters. Because at this time I had two daughters, they were 1 and 3. And I felt like 1 and 3. And I felt like I wanted to take care of them a little bit more. I wanted to provide for them. And so I started doing my own thing on the side, through a family member of his. And
Mhm.
it just went into me being caught. And so
Mm.
I spent 7 months in prison. However, I went on my birthday, my 21st birthday. I was sentenced. I went to court. I was sentenced on my 21st birthday. I was gone from all of I said family was the highlight. So you talk about I miss Thanksgiving, I miss Christmas, I miss my kids' Christmas, and that was my first time away from my girls.
Mhm.
So that in and of itself was so intense. And while all of that was happening, my mother was dying of AIDS.
Uh,
So I didn't know if I would be home before she passed away.
right.
Luckily, I did, and I did get some time to spend with her. She passed away in September. I came home in March.
Mm.
So, like the end of March. So it was, it was an experience, but what I will say is that God is in every situation in your life. And
Mhm.
though I went through these different cellmates, I wound up being in, um, I wound up being planted in a cell with a woman that actually felt like a mother figure, that
Mm.
she actually gave me the Bible and would be like, here, you need to read this. And
Wow.
so I feel like at that moment, that was just God's way of saying, your life is totally going opposite of where you were supposed to be, journeying. And
Mhm.
I needed to stop you like head on so
Yeah.
that you can make some other decisions, some better decisions, and live a life that's conducive to you being an influence to your daughters. And
Mm.
so I actually appreciated the experience later on in life, because it was the crossroads that stopped me in my tracks and was like, hey, we need to detour, you need to make some changes. And that was a great it wasn't a great experience, but it was an intense experience for me to be like, okay, God, I hear you. And so I left there, and, you know, I had a plan when I left, and I hit the ground running. And, you know, I feel like my life has been like Tina Turner, and I've been running from one year to the next to the next. And then sometimes you stop and you look back like, oh, wow, like this is not bad. You know, this is good. So it's been good.
Wow, that is something else. Did you, by any chance, do you happen to still keep in touch with the woman that inspired you while you were incarcerated?
Actually, I did. She had a drug addiction.
Hey, yo, peace world. It's the Love King of R&B, Raheem DeVaughn, and this is the Q Chat. Keep it locked right here.
Incarcerated?
Actually, I did. She had a drug addiction. So the funny thing was that I did used to keep in touch with her. I kept in touch with a lot of people that inspired, because me and this young girl, she and I used to hang out all the time, because she went to the store with her husband. Her husband robbed the store. She was married, and she didn't even know he was robbing the store. When he got back in the car, he speeding off, and so she got locked up for accessory to robbery. Wow. So she and I were like, we were really close, because it was both our first experience. And, you know, so we keep in touch a lot too. But the woman, she actually got back into, you know, her drug addiction when she came home. You know, I used to pick her up and drop her off places. And I realized this one particular time, like, she was trying to steal something from out my pocketbook. And I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna have to cut this relationship off. She would call me, I would talk to her, but I wouldn't go pick her up or anything like that.
But you know that thing, it shows like a contrast. And you were 21. You know, 21 is like such a significant milestone. 21 to, you know, have this experience with this woman that's like, hey, here's this Bible, learn about God, so you don't fall into what I'm into. And she couldn't get out. It's just such an ironic thing that, you know, you said she still had that struggle, but she still inspired you. That's like, you never know who God will use to inspire you. You know, it's just, it's amazing. Think about it.
Exactly. And I appreciate that entire experience as it relates to me. Actually, after a while, I realized that I wanted to go back, because one of the things that when you get there, they have this person that talk to you and tell you about, you know, how they got there and kind of encourage you not to return back. So at some point in my life, I realized I wanted to do that. And so what I did was my pastor got me back into, you know, doing the paperwork, and got me back into the same prison. And so through this program, I used to go back once a month to talk to women, you know, and just encourage them that it's life after prison. And, you know, it's always about decisions. And what I did, I wanted them to feel a connection to me, because I wanted them to understand that, you know, though I look different, you know, I made the same decision to be where you were, you know, those years ago. So I think that it matters when you have an experience and you're able to speak to people. And that's why me writing this book right now was so imperative, because I have been in a salon industry for 24 years to be exact. And I went through a business divorce from the person that had mentored me through the business. I was with her for 17 years. And so after those 17 years, in 2015, I started my own salon brand, which was A Virtuous Touch Salon and Spa. And after that, it's like that time period, the last 6 years, I felt like I had been trying to get back what I had lost. And so, just to be on the cusp of a pandemic. And I think, oh, well, I'm definitely not going to get our salon now because I'm in partnership with my youngest daughter. So when 2020 came, he was like, okay, 2020 vision, this gonna be the year we get our salon. And then it was just like, that's not it. Yeah. But only for God to actually allow it to happen. The month of my birthday, we moved into our new salon space. So, it's been strange, but just in this moment to see, all of my hard work and to become manifested. And to see how God worked, when you think it's not going to happen, it happens. And, right. You have all of the resources that you need to be able to move into it. So, I think that that's a good thing to kind of, allow people to understand, like, I'm operating in my purpose.
Wow. So I know one of the quotes I saw when I was looking through your media kit was, "You see my glory, but don't know my story." So obviously you've turned, like you said, it's from poverty and prison to purpose. The fact that you took your experience and you really saw the purpose of it, and I think that's one of the things that makes or breaks individuals. Life isn't fair sometimes. We all go through some things where we may receive a bad hand or whatever. Yeah. But I think makes or breaks people is when you really decide, hey, how am I going to, like you said, you don't dwell on things. When we say, hey, how am I going to take this negative experience or just this event that may have happened in our lives that we weren't prepared for or that we felt was unfair? How can we make that into a purpose to help somebody and also to heal ourselves? What I'm saying? So it's amazing what you've done. So what inspired you? And I know you touched on it briefly, but because sometimes people go through things and a lot right now, a lot of people are very empowered to put their story in a book. Yeah. But some people don't realize it's not a simple process because you got to go back and go through, recount things that you've gone through. So what inspired you to say, I really want to just make sure I put this on paper,
So what has helped me throughout my life to reflect is that I learned to journal. It's that thing where you started off with a Dear Diary, and so I think I wound up seeing Dear Diary one time, like on one of those shows that we watch as little girls. And so Dear Diary went into journaling, but I forgot about it. And my mentor in business actually, reminded me of it. She gave me a Bible, a student Bible, and then she gave me a journal. And that journal turned into 26 of them. And out of those 26 journals, I had moved out of my house because I bought my first house when I was I think I was 30. And so I moved out of the house and I left all of the stuff in the basement. And we left the house to the girls because I was married. So then when we moved back and the girls were gone, it was like, oh, well, let me create this library for myself. And so I brought all of the books up, including the journals, and I was putting them up in a room and I just started reading through them. And in me reading through the journals, it was like, I just started getting emotional. I was just like, oh my gosh, because what I realized in that moment was that my oldest daughter, I was reading her life at that moment, and it was my life. And so that made me scary. It made me angry. It made me just a lot of things because I never want my children to repeat my life.
Yeah.
And so I had always said that I was going to give those journals to my daughters, but in that moment I was like, I can't give them to them. So I actually threw them all away. And I was like, I'm going to have to rewrite this story in a way where it entails wisdom and it entails, at least some type of, a journey for them to how to remove themselves from the situation. And so that's what I wound up doing. That's where the book idea came from. I felt like I'm going to have to write this I'm going to have to write a book so that I can speak on the details of my experiences and give it to them so that they will understand. But it wasn't until I realized that I come across in the salon business where we mentor other stylists, you know, up and coming stylists. And so it wasn't until after, you know, just having the experience of mentoring a lot of young girls and me knowing the detriment of some of their stuff and they, you know, leaving or the ones that we have staying, I was like, a lot of us are dealing with a lot of things. So I was inspired to write the book for my daughters, but it actually was for a lot of daughters that, you know, I want us all to, you know, learn our worth and to not get caught up in these situations, you know, so that we can further ourselves into, you know, just a different way of thinking. Because if we don't get the influence from our parents, you know, if we don't get the influence from our parents, you know, if we are breaking generational curses and we are moving in a capacity that our families before us don't even understand, you know, i.e. the millennials, then we actually also still need some wisdom and encouragement to be able to move forward. And so that was my reasoning for writing the book, because these young people, they really need to see the good part first before they listen to you.
Right. I love it, because I think that's the thing, you know, like you said, they may see the glory, but they don't know the story. And I think sometimes when people, you know, like they said, a lot of us don't look like what we've been through. So sometimes it sees people sometimes because all they see is the aftermath of a person that really took their pain and turned it into purpose. They have no idea, you know, what that person went through, you know, which is a blessing in a way that, you know, that we all don't look like the things that we've been through. But also on the flip of that coin, it's like, no, there's a story behind that glow, you know, that deserves to be told. So I always commend people that take the time to put their story on paper, because I know it can't be easy all the time. How long did it take you to write the book?
It took me 3 years to write the book. What I will say is that in the beginning, I'm a person that start reflecting on the year in December. So I'm a strategic planner. So I start reflecting on a year in December. And I learned to do that from the business, because in my reflection, I'm looking at what worked, what didn't work. I also write down a lot of stuff. So I go through and check off what I did and what I didn't do. And so I've learned to do that in all of the areas of my life. And so I think I shared that in a reel where I write down, you know, my marriage, you know, my just me, nothing to do with anybody else, me, myself, and the business, my family, and my spiritual self is also within that. So I actually keep those separated, and I write down goals and things that I want to do throughout the year in all of those different areas. And so that one thing that I wrote down that year was that I was going to start the book. And so I had gone to a retreat, a hair show that they start off in a worship service. And I was, at some moment, the Holy Spirit came, you know, we were all crying and, you know, praising and worshiping God. And I remember the lady coming over and touching me and saying that she was like, you stay here because you're crying for something you didn't even know you had down inside of you. And so, and for a long time, I probably cried for 45 minutes because whatever she said and her touch made me cry more. And then my color mentor, she actually was covering me in prayer. So I believe that that was God stirring up the stuff that I wrote about, which was one of the things, my molestation, that I had never spoke of. So after that year, and I think that was 2017. So in 2018, I decided that I was just going to, go gun ho, and this was going to be my focus. So I remember staying home, being relaxed for like a week and writing, just writing. And at one point of me writing, I stopped writing for about 2 months because what I had written, I had to heal through. So there were points in this book where I didn't realize I needed to heal through. I had to heal through writing about the molestation that I never spoke. And then I had to have a conversation with my grandmother about things that I never talked about. And so this book it gave me healing. It actually allowed me to speak some things to my grandmother about things that I've experienced and my mother experienced that she didn't know. So it gave life to those secrets that we keep as family, as family members, and, kind of release this freedom that it doesn't hold, over you, and you don't realize it. So I think that journey was about healing. It was about you're telling my truth, regardless of how you knew some of the characters, if they read it, it would affect them. So I realized when I was writing it, it would affect other people that had not come to a place where they, had come to be okay with their past.
Right.
And so, with that, I've lost, some relationships.
Wow.
Which is okay with me, because I feel like, when you journal and elevate to a level where what I wrote in its full transparency and exposed myself was to help other people be okay with who they are in life, because this is who a lot of us are. We just never talk about it. And so just to talk about it and say, well, this is how we become, a virtuous woman. This is how we walk into, freedom, where we release all of those things that, were the bad parts of us, or the not so good parts of us, and the parts that we don't want to share. But those were the parts that, we had to journey through to try to figure out who we were as a person when your parents didn't, help you with that. And both of my parents were drug addicted. So my father was always in jail, and my mother, had a drug addiction. So she gave us the best that she could.
Yeah. Have you ever gone through any type of therapy or anything with, to deal with what you've gone through?
You know what? The somebody on a radio station asked me the same question. No, I have not actually paid and sat on somebody's sofa and gone through surgery. But me being a hairstylist, I feel like, we have a license to touch. And that touch actually goes both ways. And so I have therapists that I service. I have wise women, I have older women that I will honestly say, they have counseled me over the years, over my 24 years of being behind the chair. So where I didn't actually, and it was for free. So where I didn't actually sit and pay somebody, I actually, had the pleasure of being influenced by women that were wise and mature for me to be able to grow from.
Now, I know one of the things that have been the thread for you and your experiences and everything that I read was your relationship with God, obviously. And I think that's obviously your therapy. How important was it, your relationship with God, and how do you feel? I know, like I said, just looking at you, like I said, you can't tell what people have gone through by looking at them, but you still have joy about you, and even when you talked about your incarceration, you didn't even speak about it in a negative way, spoke about like this was really the ingredient to, get you to where you're at now. So how important has your relationship with God been? Because obviously that's been the thread just from talking to you, through your whole journey.
It has.
Hi, this is Gary with the 10. I'm going to give a shout out to the Q Chat Podcast. Go, girl! You got it going on, baby.
That's been the thread just from talking to you, through your whole journey.
It has. My grandmother, my paternal grandmother, my brother and I used to go over my family's house for the summer. And though we were young, I watched my paternal grandmother. Her name is Mary. She's no longer here, but I watched her, sing, worship, and she went to church. Now, on our side, my family actually has a deep Christian background, starting from my great grandmother all the way to my great grandmother, but they never worshiped inside of a church. So it was like I got the best of both, but it was like, a little confusing. But the people when we were in the projects, the older ladies came into the projects on Saturdays, and they invited all of the young people to Saturday church school. And so Saturday church school was just a way for the older women in Sharp Street Church to reach out to the young people. And so we thought we were going there to play and, do all of these, they fed us. So it was Sunday school on a Saturday, but they had fun ways of teaching you these things. And so they would teach you songs. So Saturday church school turned into Sunday school, and them inviting us to church to sing on holidays like Easter. So that was like the beginning or the foundation of, my experience in my relationship with God. And so though I was always, in all of those activities, I never really had a relationship with God, my own relationship, until like when I was younger and things would happen. And, I would always feel like I would feel like there wasn't any hope. And every time I felt like there wasn't any hope, it was like I was at somebody's church.
Right.
So it was always as if like I was in and out. But I remember this one time that kind of stopped that in and out. And it was, me being in a club. I went to 3 different clubs, car got towed away. It was like all of these things happening one night on trying to hang out for New Year's Eve. And this was after I had my daughters, and I was like, okay, we can't do this no more. Like, I need to stop. Like, this is ridiculous. I think somebody called, the car got broken into, the coats was gone. We drove home with the cold, no windows. It was like, this was it. And I think God has always done things like bang to get my attention. And so that was my attention. And I was like, I'm going to church next year. I was like, I ain't doing this again. I'm going to church next year. And so I started going to church. And I can't remember specifically, was it watch night service or but I wound up going back to church. And when I went to church, I wound up going back for evening service, and this church was there, and I don't know, I connected with the pastor. And so I wound up going to their church. And that was where I had my relationship with God was cultivated in that ministry. And I was in that ministry for 10 years before I left and went to another ministry. But over the years, what I've realized, even in me being in ministry and in church, I realized that, for the first church, I actually, the pastor and his wife, I worshiped because they became my parents. So I really didn't have a connection where a separation where these are spiritual beings, you know, these are spiritual parents helping me develop my relationship with God. I actually, because I didn't have parents, I attached that to them. So, you know, that was unhealthy in a sense, because whatever they did that disappoint me made me feel like I had a church hurt. But later on, I realized that, no, really, you was just broken in the beginning and you worship them instead of God. So I don't know, God always had this way of bringing back to me like the things that I've done wrong. And so it just made me free up, you know, me feeling like, you know, y'all did this to me. I ain't going back to the church no more. And really taking the responsibility to put it where it was. And it was that I was still broken as a girl, as a woman. And so, you know, that's how you know, my life, once I get to another church, I evolve, because now I'm just like, I just want to love. But the one thing that freed me up to understand relationship, the Trinity, that it really is not attached to a person, whether you're under a covering in church or whether you have a pastor. It's just about your relationship with the Trinity, was the Shack. When I read that book, one of my clients gave me that book, and I always felt like God put him in my chair for a reason, because he was like a father figure to me. And you know, as young girls, we look at it like men leave us, like nobody ever stays. And what I realized was that this man stayed in my life for almost the entire time of me being in the salon. So for 16 years, I had this man sit in my chair, you know, maybe 3 times out of the year, or maybe 4 times out of the year. But when he sat in my chair, he left me with some wisdom of a father. So much so that, you know, he was the person that I would just be so free to talk to him about certain things. And he left me one time when he was like, he got up, he listened to me, and I would tell him so much stuff. He listened to me and he got up and said, I want you to start valuing yourself as a young woman. And that was, and he left me with more wisdom, but that was the moment where I realized he really cared about me. Like he cared, like this was some words that I was supposed to get from my father, but God put a man in my chair as a stylist for me to style his hair and cut his hair, for him to give me that wisdom. And so after that, I just started taking my worth and my value a lot more seriously, where I wasn't giving myself, you know, because I talk about having a sexual addiction, you know, I wasn't giving myself freely to people, you know, that I started, you know, understanding that, you know, my body was a temple, and that, you know, I had to just retract from all of that behavior, you know, lustful behavior. And from that moment, I realized that God loved me, that he always put people in my path for me to grow to another level. So much so that it was at that moment, it was like nobody could tell me God don't exist. He's been in my life all my life, and I'm going to go hard for God. So when it comes to like my relationship with God, like I worship every chance I get. I do go to church. I worship, and it's like God never ceased to amaze me. And so that was the only relationship that I could filter, that was not tangible, that I feel like made sense, that I could rely on, that from one broken part to the next, to the one tribulation to the next, that I was always going to have God in my life, and it was always going to feel like things were going to get better. So it's like, to me, that's like my heavenly father. I didn't have an earthly father, but he always utilized people to put in my life for me to feel that, okay, God did this, you know. So that's my relationship with God.
Wow. Now, another thing that I want to round off with, which ties into really what you just said, you know, like I said, the show, the platform focuses on self-love. You know, I've talked to a lot of women on the show that have done some amazing things, but they, you know, they had to go through some mountains, you know, they had to climb a lot of mountains to get to where they're at. And one thing about, you know, African American women, you know, we grew up as these little Black girls that sometimes aren't told you're beautiful, or sometimes aren't told you're smart, or sometimes aren't made to feel that we're worthy and that we're deserving of things. Or a lot of us we don't even know until way down the line we're deserving of things. Or a lot of us we don't even know until way down the line that our bodies are simple. You know, we go through so much, you know, these little Black girls, and a lot of us, we grow up as women, but we're still these little Black girls internally that haven't healed, you know, that's still struggling. We're still trying to find ourselves, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of times it happens after we're mothers. So we're sitting there trying to feed into, you know, our seed, but we are still growing and healing and broken. So one of the beautiful things though is when, you know, I speak to people like yourself and a lot of us that have, you know, had some enlightenment in our lives, is self-love. You know, I think that that's the crust, you know, that's the turning point for a lot of us, is when we really, like you mentioned, how you learn things about yourself through God, and just how you were valuable, how you were worthy. Self-love is what really gets us there. You know, we're like, wait, I am worth better. You know what I'm saying? I can achieve my dreams. I really can pour into my children. I can have the career I want. You know, I am worthy.
Yes.
So how has self-love helped you? You know, I mean, obviously, like you said, you mentioned, you know, your spiritual connection. But, you know, like you said, you went through a lot as well. How did that self-love let you know, okay, I'm bigger than my circumstances? You know what I'm saying? Like, how has that helped you? And how do you define self-love too? Because there's going to be some people that's going to tune in, you know, and they're still struggling, you know.
So the one thing that I realized, I think when I first, you know, when first love first hit me, self-love first hit me, where I reflected on it, was, I think, music. I think music has always helped me. I'm a diehard Mary J. Blige fan. And so, you know, just to be able to hear her music and watch her elevate and journey to a totally different place, I think for me, that was hope for me, that, okay, if she did it, you know, I can do it. So I always felt like the people you hang around, the things you listen to, you know, the things that you feed yourself with are going to help you, or they're going to hurt you. And with that, she helped me. Like, she helped me through just being incarcerated, because we listened to her, my life, every day.
Wow.
So that was like, you know, a good place, you know, for me to, you know, be like, I gotta believe, you know. And so hearing that song every day, you know, and those words, it's kind of like how they say you have to, you know, write down affirmations. It affirms, you know, that you're better than where you are. And so that was the number one thing, you know, just music, me listening to music that actually, you know, just get into my spirit. And I remember one time also at church, like the song, Yes, by Shekinah Glory. I don't know what it was about that song, but every time I felt myself like in a place where I didn't understand where it was, and it was just like, it was hard for me, I would turn that song on and blast it in the car, and I would be crying and singing, because I feel like in your yes with God, you leave places that are comfortable for you at that moment, but then it's kind of like God, like, no, you got to go. And so you leave people, places, and things. And so I have gotten used to leaving people, places, and things. That song helped me to be able to adopt where God is taking me, because the one thing is that if you're moving, you're growing, and you're elevating within yourself, everybody can't go with you. And so that was another thing that helped me with that, those two songs. But then My daughters gave me my first birthday party at 37, and it was a surprise.
Mhm.
And I think that up until that moment, I didn't know how to celebrate myself. I just wanted everybody to give me gifts, and it's my birthday. I would fuss people out. You ain't give me no card, because I felt like it was their job to celebrate me.
Right.
But when my daughters gave me my first surprise birthday party, what they gave me also was the fact that I deserved to be celebrated. And so from that day on, I was like, I'm going to plan my birthdays myself, and I'm going to do things myself. And so what I did was I did things that I loved. I went to the spa. I would indulge in dinner, fine dining, just all of those things. And I just started treating myself the way I would want somebody to treat me. So, instead of me looking for people to love on me, I loved on myself. And so I think that is a journey that you have to learn, how to love on yourself. You can't expect people to come into your life and you supposed to treat me this way. I expect them to do this, but you don't do these things yourself. And so that's where the self-love come in, because you have to love on yourself and feel valued enough to know what you deserve, or otherwise you'll accept whatever people give you. And so that there was a time where, after that whole self-love thing, I was listening to India Arie at that moment, and I was just empowered, like, oh, I can go out to dinner everywhere. So I was eating out by myself a lot by myself. And people would be like, on Valentine's Day, I would go. They were like, you going out on Valentine's Day by yourself? Yes, girl, they have a great menu. Like, because it was like, just embrace it. This is who you are. I would take my daughters, but by the time my daughters were older and they were doing whatever they wanted to do with their friends, it was like, I'm going out myself. So I would take myself out on Saturdays, and I would just feel uncomfortable sometimes, but I embrace the uncomfort, because it's like you go out on those days and it's just a bunch of couples.
Yeah.
So, you gotta, ease through, like, oh, it's a bunch of couples, oh, you see this, so it's like all of the things that you think affect you, you have to become comfortable with, so they no longer affect you. And you move through loving yourself. And I think that, that's the thing, finding those things that you could do to speak to yourself, and just creating boundaries with people also. I think that's a part of self-love, always saying yes, yes, yeah, or going to support everybody, running from here, there, and the other. I think you have to, put yourself first and be like, I can't do that. I'm always gonna love and support, but you can't. And so, it teaches you to not only love yourself, but it also teaches you that if that love is not reciprocated, or, to not, be in relationships where you deposit in so much and you're not getting any, withdrawal. And so it's an ongoing thing. Because I'm just getting to the part where, I'm realizing some people have not reciprocated relationship. And I'm like, I love them, but I can't give you any more of my time to that degree. Like, so it's a constant self-reflection that I think that we'll be growing at, throughout life.
Oh, yeah. Yes, you said a mouthful, and that is true. There's so many different layers what you mentioned, and I'm so happy you mentioned about reciprocal relationships, giving, when it feels like you're depositing so much, but you're not receiving anything in return. And that is a huge, huge thing regarding self-love, just as women, how we view relationships or friendships or even things in our family. That self-love, loving ourselves, also means that we don't have to always be givers. That strong Black woman narrative hurts us, and sometimes conditioned like that as children. We're little girls and we're taught, even if you got a bad vibe from somebody, you're supposed to be polite and nice, and I think that's where a lot of the cycle starts, where we start minimizing our importance or minimizing our value because, you know, and it leaks over when we're adults. And you just said a lot, you know, just having reciprocal, valuable relationships too
Yeah.
ties into self-love. You know, our choices ties into self-love.
Yeah.
Also, what we feed into ourselves ties into self-love. Like you just mentioned something as what we listen to. You know, it's into our self-love, you know, because it's all what we feed into ourselves that really can make or break us. So I really, really, really enjoyed this conversation. Before we end everything, tell everybody how they can find you on social media and also how they can get this book, which I know, tell everybody how they can find you on social media and also how they can get this book, which I know will change lives. So definitely give everybody all your information.
Okay. Before I say that though, to finish the relationship thing, I just also wanted to say that in me doing all of that self-work within myself, which is kind of like how I ended up, you know, meeting my husband, you know, and how our relationship and our dynamic was totally different from how I met people before, because I had created this 1 to 5 list that I wouldn't compromise on. And then 6 through 10, I would compromise. And so, you know, in that it created, you know, just a confidence within myself, like, you know, that I never had before, where I don't want another broken relationship. Like I've had plenty, you know, I've had my share of creating these myself. And so, you know, I think that that's one of the things that I wanted to share with the viewers is that, you know, you have to have some things like a list that you know you're not going to compromise on. And that list really wasn't about money. That list was, you know, he had to have a relationship with God, because I was like, I'm not introducing anybody to God. He needed to be strong enough to cover me when I needed prayer. So I felt like he needed to have his own relationship. That was one. The other one was that I didn't care where he worked at, as long as he had a career or he was doing something within his life. He had his own home, which meant that he had been exposed to some type of responsibility, and that he had his own vehicle, because I wasn't driving anybody around anymore. And so it was like those 4 things. And I was like, that he had a relationship with his family, because family was important to me, and that I needed him to understand relationship with my daughters. So if he had a relationship with his mother and his family, then he would be able to value relationship as I valued it. And I think that, you know, I wanted to share that list because a lot of us think that that list is supposed to look totally different. He light skinned, he dark skinned. My husband looks nothing like what I would have wanted God to send me. Like, you know, he not the dark skin, you know, Morris chestnut that I thought was coming. You know, he the short brown skinned guy that God sent me, and that God knew could handle my heart and who I would become. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to share with the viewers, that, you know, it's not what we perceive what we want, but it's always what God thinks and knows what we need. And in that relationship, I had to learn how not to be the powerful Black woman that raised these 2 daughters, single woman in a household. And so I've been married for 8 years. So it took me maybe 7 to learn how to put the hats that I wear in the salon business, the hats that I wear as a Black woman, you know, just to put that aside and learn how to submit to this marriage and this relationship. And that I don't always have to be the person with the let's do this and let's do this. Like, I need to learn how to follow. And so that has also been, you know, I wanted to share that because you talked about the, you know, the Black women syndrome. You know, do it all. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to share. But my book, From Poverty in Prison into Purpose, can be found on Amazon.com, and it also can be found on www.daniellegiddens.com. and that's my website. If you purchase it through my website, I'll leave you a note within the book, and then you'll also get a free bookmark. If you purchase it from Amazon, that's totally fine. All I ask is that once you read the book, if you can leave me a review. All of my handles on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn and YouTube is Danielle C. Giddens. You can find me on all of those channels. And thank you so much, Sharonda, for having me, the Q Chat. I appreciate it. This was wonderful. I think that what you're doing is a wonderful thing. And I believe that we can infect our young people. We can change the dynamics of, everything that we grew up in. Don't tell, keep the secret, just heal through it. Us growing up with little girls and we big women, I think that this is what you're doing and what I'm doing is a part of, chiseling away at that narrative so that we can, grow healthy kids, and they don't have to be, grow up into grown women and men with little boys and little girls inside.
Yes. Thank you so much. This has been oh my God, such a rich conversation. It has so much substance to help people. And I'm happy that you threw in that last list, because I think another thing with the strong Black women narrative, like I said, a lot of us are broken little girls. Sometimes we also think that we're not worthy of healthy relationships. Yeah. We think that it's just something that we'll never have, even some of us that may think that we're worthy, I know that we're worthy. We think that it's impossible, that we're just not going to find that person, right? Even if we have certain things that just are non-negotiable. We think, we're being too picky. But, when we really do love ourselves and understand who we really are, we are valuable and we can say what we want, and there is somebody for us. So I'm happy that you brought that in, because I think sometimes with the whole strong Black woman narrative, sometimes some of us are desiring that husband, or that connection, but we're also told under the strong Black woman narrative that, we don't need a man, we don't have to, and it's not about
make this amount of money and all of that.
All right, so I think that's an important conversation that needs to be had too, that Black women are worthy and deserving of love, number one, and there are some good Black men out there. So like I said, I definitely appreciate that last gem you threw in as well. And for everybody listening, this conversation, and if you look at some past episodes, there's always a common thread. I've spoken to a lot of amazing, beautiful Black women that have climbed some mountains, like I said, myself included, and we've gotten to a different stage in life. A lot of us don't look like what we've experienced. But when you turn that pain into purpose, I've talked about this in the past, turning your pain into purpose. And it's not an easy thing. It's not an overnight process. It takes time. It takes work. It takes healing, because a lot of us have those wounds that are festering because we haven't treated it. But when you really get to that stage in your life, when you understand, hey, this pain that I went through, it's no coincidence. It's what I was assigned in order to have that purpose. That's when you have freedom. That's when you will experience joy. And that's when you really, truly will experience peace in your life as well. We all deserve peace. But just to understand, a lot of things that we've gone through, we have that heavy weight sometimes when we just don't understand why. So that's why it's so important when you listen to this conversation, turning your pain into purpose. Because when you turn that pain into purpose, not only does it help you heal, it also helps the next person. Because that's the beauty of life. When we try and help that next person, we give them an arm that pull them up so that they know that they don't have to sit and fester in their stink. And also when we see the younger generation behind us so that they can listen to their stories. Because we are our sister's keeper. Hey, you don't have to repeat what I've repeated. You are worthy and you can have a beautiful life. So like I said, this has been a great conversation, guys. You can catch this episode, the audio and the video version is on Go Queen TV on YouTube. But if you go to the website, www.theqchat.com, you'll have the links to all of these recordings in all the formats. But make sure whatever you do, just value yourself, be safe, and go love yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a great day.
Della must have did this beat.